Taylor Swift argues for a better deal for more Spotify artists. Samsung's S10 may be absolutely massive, and we find out how good a Netflix Christmas really is. It's all coming up on the CNET UK podcast, episode 548. Hello and welcome to the show. I'm Andrew Hoyle, and joining me today is Rich Trenholm. Oh wait, no, you don't. Is that Rich? Oh no, wait, it's Katie Collins.
No, it is Rich.
Oh, it is Rich.
I'm just very good at disguising myself.
As Katie Collins, European correspondent.
Exactly, that's me, Rich Trenholm, in here.
Just confirm for me that you are actually Katie Collins.
Okay then, fine. I am Katie Collins.
Well, that's good because I've tailored this show a little bit around you, and I do mean that pun to be as good as it was. I have tailored the show in that I'm talking about Taylor Swift, your BFF, your fave.
What a very natural segue that was into our first news story.
I thought so too. This is our first news story. You're absolutely right to say it in those precise words. Because Taylor Swift has got a new record deal with Universal. And you may be thinking, well, what the hell has that got to do with CNET? And you'll probably still be thinking that at the end of the story. But we're going to try anyway, because you think this is relevant and you're going to tell us why, aren't you?
Absolutely. So the background to this story is that Taylor Swift has signed a brand new record deal. It's the first time in her career since she first signed her record deal at the age of 14 that she's done so. 14?
Yes. She's been in that deal since she was 14?
Yes, she has.
I wonder if the terms have changed as she's got, become an international megastar.
But so this new deal, the one that she's obviously had all of the big record labels kind of bidding for her. But the thing that literally has sealed the deal for her is that she wanted to make sure that there was a specific clause to do with Spotify front and centre.
Okay. She never wants to be on it again, is that right?
That's not it at all. So effectively, all of the big record labels have shares in Spotify since the company went public. Now, when there are sort of rumours that Universal Music Group is going to sell its shares next year in Spotify, and what Taylor wanted was for all of the artists that are signed to Universal to get a share of the money should Universal Music Group cash in on its equity.
That seems like a good positive move.
Yes,
on Taylor's part.
Indeed, and Universal's agreed to this, and to also to make sure that it's not recouped. It doesn't kind of collect unrecouped money through the shares. So effectively, if artists owe outstanding money to the label for whatever reason, it's not going to offset the money that it gets from these shares against that amount. So no matter what happens, no matter what the kind of financial situation is between the label and the artist,
they get a nice bonus.
Every single artist will get money. You
know what? I'm not entirely sure I agree with that, or maybe I just don't understand it in quite the right terms, because in a nutshell, the way recording contracts tend to work is a record label will effectively upfront the cost of a band's music production or the tour, or they basically give them this upfront amount of cash, whether that's 10 grand or 100 grand or whatever, and the band basically earns money by releasing albums and by touring and pays that money off. That is effectively a loan. Now, I'm not really the label is owed that money by the band, so I'm not sure if they were to sell those shares and then say to the band, well, here is effectively, I don't know, you would get £20,000 from the sale of the Spotify money, but we're keeping that and knocking it off your debt. That's still money that they'd be paying back. I don't necessarily see that, as long as that is knocked off in some way, as long as it isn't just more profit for Universal. But if it is still knocked off that debt, that's still money, effectively money for the artist.
I think the whole point of this is that streaming as a kind of a way of making money for artists has been extremely volatile. A lot of artists feel like they're being very much undercompensated. It takes ages for the money to get between from when we as consumers are streaming a song for the money to arrive in the bank account of the artist.
There's so many hands in that pot.
Yeah, it takes a long time, and often they're not compensated the way that they should. And I think that this is a way of investing in creators long term, saying to writers, to artists, to producers, streaming is an incredibly volatile, difficult industry for you, but what we want is for we want you to keep doing what you're doing. We want you to keep whatever your kind of talent is and your skill is, and whatever kind of music you're making. We want you in the long term to feel like this is a profitable industry for you, that you can keep making this amazing music that we're all effectively profiting off.
Sure.
So I think that's basically.
It's a nice gesture, effectively, then, isn't it?
It is, and it's an important. It's a show of support to the artist. It's a show of, it's a real, because a lot of artists struggle with this, and it's okay for big artists like Taylor Swift, who have, Taylor has got a long history with Spotify where she pulled all of her music off.
For 3 years, she didn't have any of her music on Spotify. That's a big deal.
Yeah, but when she rejoined the service, the terms were slightly renegotiated slightly, but
we don't know how, do we? We don't know exactly what those terms are.
But it's hard for smaller artists and more independent artists and whatever to make that kind of stand, to say, to throw, because they don't have as much weight to throw around. And I think the point of this as well is that it's about bigger artists saying, it's not just about getting money for themselves, but it's about making sure that across the whole of the industry that the artists are ultimately treated fairly, and it's effectively like a big artist standing up for all of the smaller artists out there. And I think that is a really, when it comes to negotiating how things kind of pan out in this brave new world of streaming, that the people who do have clout are effectively using it to ensure the future of the music industry.
Which is good. That's really positive. And in fact, Universal aren't the only major label doing this. Sony, in the summer of this year, sold half of its Spotify stake, and that was valued at $768 million. And I believe shared it with its artists.
So it's sold half its stake, and it has it shared it with its artists. Warner, which is the other kind of
other major one,
other major label, has also sold some of its stake in Spotify, and gave said that it would allocate money to the artists, but it is offsetting it against the money that the artists owe them. Yeah,
which I don't necessarily think is unfair. Like, that money is owed, and the artist is effectively getting that money. Like, if you won £10,000 now, whether you got that in cash or whether they lopped it off, say your student loan, that's still money that in the long term is coming back to you.
I guess it's about the label saying to the artists, we respect what you're doing, and we respect the fact that that this is not an easy industry for you to produce the kind of work in that is making us money and that is allowing this industry to be sustainable for the future. So it's a show of support, really, and maybe they don't have to do it at all, but maybe they should be doing it.
Yeah,
and it's one of those cases, and ultimately the labels have agreed. They have said, yes, actually we do think that we should be doing this. They don't have to, but they've made that call, and they've said that actually. Yeah, and they can see that this is really important for the future of the music industry. Yeah. So it's not like it's just artists against the labels and fighting over who should own them, who should get that money. The labels are in agreement here ultimately. But this was a real. It's interesting that this hard fought over record deal, that this is one of the. We don't know many of the details about this record deal, but
we rarely do when it comes to these things.
All we know is it's a multi-album agreement. This is one of the stipulations. The other is that Taylor Swift will own all of the masters that she makes for all of the music that she makes from now on, or they'll revert back to her 5 years after they've been released, effectively.
Sure.
So
that's good for her.
So there's one thing there that's good for her, and one thing there that's good for all of the artists. So I'm sure there are lots of artists at Universal Music Group who will probably be incredibly grateful to her.
Yeah.
For making sure that was in there, because it is something that has been rumoured and that they've been talking about and thinking about, and that artists are, unless somebody uses their leverage to ensure that happens.
And she has leverage, and that's good.
Yeah.
The issue that she's using, that she recognises that she is a big deal, and not that she's she's not trying to like hold them over a barrel or anything like that. She's not trying to go in with these big demands that would be like negative on the industry. This is the whole idea, is that it's about making a good step in the right direction for more artists, and the fact that they have supported that is good. And because you're right, if it was a small artist coming on, they have to fight to get with a good label, and often they don't get the terms that they want, and therefore they can't turn around and say we want to do this. And that's why we're seeing a lot of artists who are coming in on much smaller labels and or even launching their own labels and launching their own music independently, because they just can't make the money when Spotify doesn't pay. I don't know what the figure is, but I know it's a really shockingly poor amount, if like per stream. Like it's such a 0.0000% per stream. They have to have however many thousands of streams in order to get even any money at all. But that's not what we want to talk about, because we don't. A lot of this is very sort of behind closed doors. Spotify and the labels generally don't talk openly about how much money is made, and so it is sometimes difficult to work out exactly how much is changing hands. There's a lot of things where we only kind of hear when certain bands or certain labels will basically try and get a little bit of publicity by kicking up a fuss about it. But it's interesting that Taylor has, because she has very publicly gone out against Spotify. She also criticised Apple Music for the amount that it was paying fans, and Apple, both Apple and Spotify, worked to rehash their terms in line with kind of what she wanted, but for all artists. She wasn't just trying to do this for her own music; it was also for other artists.
I feel like the Spotify thing, obviously that was a good 3 years of going back and forth and negotiating there, but the Apple Music thing was quite extraordinary, because that was a turnaround of around 24 hours when that happened. Effectively it was when Apple said that it was going to be launching its music service, and during the trial period, when people can use the service for free in order to decide whether they want to sign up and pay for it or not, they weren't going to be paying artists that for streams that happen during trial periods, which is kind of outrageous, especially given that they are one of the wealthiest companies in the world, to say that actually that they were not going to be paying artists for their streams during a free trial that they were giving away. It was really, now when you think about it, at the time, but like now in retrospect, that seems totally out of order. And the letter,
I actually didn't know that was the case. That is absolutely bonkers.
Yeah, and the fact that Taylor Swift wrote this letter, and then 24 hours later Eddie Q, who was in charge of Apple Music, went, "We hear you, fine, we'll pay you."
Yeah, that seems a bit of a knee-jerk. It's almost like they've been caught red-handed, they knew they had to make this quick decision. So I don't see that as a good thing. That wasn't like they sat down and negotiated over a period of time. That was like, oh yeah, we tried to get away with this and we can't, so let's change it.
But again, it just shows that it really is. It's difficult for people to create that kind of change in the music industry and to make stuff happen unless they are a big name and they can guarantee a certain amount of publicity, and it is up to the bigger artists out there to stand up and to set and to take a stand in these situations. And that is not like, it's great that when you see artists doing that, but it's a terrible precedent to set for the music industry on the whole, that like the only way that things will ever get better for artists and change is if like one person really takes it upon themselves, or perhaps a group of people take it upon themselves. I think if the balance was more fairly distributed in the first place, then it wouldn't be necessary to do that.
It's almost like the labels want the most money for themselves.
And power.
That's
Shocking.
That's a surprising news.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us on the CNET UK podcast, where we bring you the biggest tech scoops. Moving swiftly on, let's see what I did there. We're going to talk a little bit about the Samsung Galaxy S10, Katie.
Is it that time already?
We're getting close to that time, and we have mentioned this phone a couple of times already on the podcast, but we're coming back to it now because we have a new report, and this is coming in from the Wall Street Journal, credible source, we might say. And those guys say that the S10 is going to come in an immense 6.7-inch size, that it will have 6 cameras, and it will have 5G. What do you think of that?
Well, I mean, it's a tablet.
That's note size.
And
really.
it's this whole thing about more cameras on the back of phones. It reminds me of like a few years ago when phone manufacturers were having that battle to kind of who can put the most megapixels.
It's exactly the same battle, yeah.
And it's a like I think it's one of those things that it makes people. It's probably. I'm not saying that there's no technical benefit to having those 6 cameras on a phone, but I think it's almost one of those things where it's massive one-upmanship, and almost trying to persuade people that more is better.
Certainly is.
And what we spent a really long time as tech journalists doing during that like megapixel battle was explaining to consumers, actually, more isn't always better. It's not that simple. Like, it's not the only thing that you need to look at when you're deciding on a.
Well, it's not even as simple as that, because it's going to be 4 on the back, 2 in the front. So we'll have 2 front-facing cameras, and there'll be 4 cameras on the back. At the moment, I think the most we've seen on the back in a flagship mainstream phone, I'm not including things like the Amazon Fire phone, which had 1 billion cameras. The Huawei Mate 20 Pro and the P20 Pro, they had 3 cameras, and there are probably others. So yeah, 4 would be quite a lot, and almost certainly we'll see like different things in terms of zoom, like a telephoto zoom, and there'll be almost certainly things like 3D depth recognition for like a better portrait mode pictures, or even like 3D scanning objects and that sort of thing. So that'll be interesting. 6.7 inches. That's going to be very, very, very big. That's again in line with the Note range. So we're not expecting this to be the only S10 phone. This will probably be the biggest in a range of S10 phones. There's also had rumours where we may have a whole range, including like a budget option, almost like an S10 Lite, going through to the flagship, and then this may be like the max version, the biggest hyper-powered phone of the range. 5G isn't surprising, because next year in the UK is when we're going to start seeing 5G launching. EE and Vodafone have both said that it's next year we're going to see 5G launching to consumers. Right now we have already got trials going on. Trials don't count. It's when it actually goes on sale, and that is going to be next year in, I think, starting in 20 cities in the country, but it will start to spread. So that's going to be really interesting, because it will be at MWC in Barcelona. That's the big mobile showcase where we see all the big brands showing off their new wares. We're going to start seeing a lot more talk about 5G phones and a lot more phones actually going on sale. So it'll be interesting to see 5G launching in that phone, but not surprising. That's in line with what we expect to see.
So when it comes to 5G phones, I expect actually we might start to see some announcements over the next few weeks. And the reason that I say that is because a lot of the 5G phones will contain Qualcomm's 7nm chipset that it's been developing for 5G, and Qualcomm's due to make some announcements, I think, over the next few weeks. I don't know specifically what they are, but I imagine they might not announce the specific phones, but they might announce some partnerships, and sort of say we will be seeing 5G phones from these manufacturers specifically next year. I don't know if Samsung will be among them.
But it definitely will. Like, we know that they will be.
Definitely be a lot of the Chinese manufacturers. But I expect that we will start to see these first 5G handsets in the flesh, hopefully at Mobile World Congress next year. The one thing that is going to be really interesting for Samsung specifically, I think, is that often Samsung is at the top, battling it out with Apple to see who can have the most exciting flagship phone of the year, and
hence 6 cameras.
Yes, and what as far as we know, we might not be getting a 5G iPhone next year, in accordance with the kind of the life cycle, the release cycle of iPhone. So we could be getting a 5G flagship phone from Samsung, but not from Apple. So if you are one of those people that always wants to get, a flagship phone every year, and you're agnostic when it comes to operating system, then this could be a really crucial thing if you see yourself as an early adopter of new technologies, because it's possible, we don't know for sure. I'd just like to caveat that, but it might be a choice between getting a 5G phone and an iPhone next year.
Yeah, but that also, I think it's going to be worth remembering that 5G is exciting as a concept, but 5G doesn't necessarily mean you're going to have suddenly supercharged speed. It's not suddenly everything's going to be faster and better quality, and 5G goes a little bit beyond that. The way, and I'm not going to get too technical because a lot of this is still a little bit surprisingly theoretical, but it's about the way it uses the networks is more. It's talking about bigger bandwidth, so connecting a lot more Internet of Things devices. So as everything you have in your house, your car, your office place is connected from, not just your phone and your laptop, but fridges and light bulbs and everything else in your house. There's a lot more bandwidth in 5G to support those devices. So it's not just about suddenly you can stream YouTube 4K even faster. We can already do that now. So things like that isn't going to make a lot of difference. So I think at the moment it's important not to get blown away by what inevitably will be that hype around 5G is bigger and better. You have to have 5G. Almost certainly EE, Vodafone, the other networks, when they launch 5G, it will be targeted as this is the fastest, the best thing to have. And there's going to be a lot of rhetoric going around about that. But realistically, certainly in the early days, that isn't necessarily going to mean you have got the best service. And there's a lot of things we don't know about how well that signal is going to penetrate into like rural areas, something that apparently 5G will help with because of the way that the signals work. So there's a lot of unknowns. Basically what I'm saying right now is like if that battle between Samsung on potentially 5G and Apple potentially not being on 5G is not necessarily one is going to be faster.
This is very true, and I think that for the majority of people, I don't think that 5G or a 5G contract will necessarily be something that you will either want to pay for, or that you will feel like you need maybe for another 2 to 3 years realistically. And it's important to remember that 5G is built on a base of 4G. You can the 4G is also improving, and 4G is getting better all the time, and that the LTE advanced contracts out there, the ones that are offering really, really high speeds, probably are going to be equally as desirable for a while as 5G.
Yeah, and the services that you use won't immediately catch up to demanding those speeds in the same way as Netflix now on the go. You can now get much better quality video and you can stream it very comfortably. But those services weren't really designed for phones and apps when 4G first launched anyway. It's only as it's developed and more people have it that those services become available. The same thing will happen. So it's one of those things that you may not necessarily need to be an early adopter. Back to the phone though. Will it fold? Because, of course, we were talking last time about Samsung's foldable phone, which it showed off and will be an official product. We believe, no, that is going to be a second product line. We're not going to see the S10 as the first in a foldable line of smartphones. Instead, the foldable phone will probably be the Galaxy X or the Galaxy F, and that will almost certainly be a product line launching alongside the Galaxy S line of phones, which makes sense because that is another one of Samsung's, I'm going to say gimmicks. I don't necessarily mean that in a disparaging way.
I was going to say experimental concepts.
Experimental concepts is fine. Again, like, we talked about last time with the Galaxy K Zoom, their camera phone, and they had their curved, not bendy, but curved phone before now. So was that not LG, or did Samsung? Samsung did one too. Okay. Samsung, LG, I think HTC may have had one. There are a few, and thankfully they went away pretty quickly. But yeah, so we're gonna obviously keep our eye very, very closely on Samsung's Galaxy S10 and the foldable phone, and of course 5G developments. I would be interested actually to know how excited our audience is, podcast listeners or watchers, how keen you are to get 5G and how you think it's going to make a difference. So if you do have any thoughts on that, please do let us know. The email address is cnetukpodcast@cbsi.com, or you can tweet Katie Collins or Battery HQ if you'd rather do it that way. Genuinely do want to know what you think about that, so please do tell us. But I think we should move on to something a little bit more festive, and that, of course, is Netflix.
Yes.
Who apparently have a good line in soppy Christmas films.
They do. Some of them have already been released. Some of them are still to be released over the coming weeks. For example, if you were a fan of last year's The Christmas Prince, I think that there is a sequel lined up to that should be coming out sometime over the next week. On that, but there are also a whole range of other Christmas movies that should be either available to you now or coming soon.
The big one that they're plugging at the moment is The Princess Switch.
It is.
Now, we watched that over the weekend with ex of this show, Luke Westaway, and I'm going to say it's not exactly a corker of a film.
I mean, I would say it's deeply flawed, and
deeply flawed. Can you imagine that on the poster?
But I do think, I'm currently writing my review of this, and I have said that I think that while it's kind of a botched attempt at a Christmas rom-com, and has many faults, I do think that there is a strong argument for maybe sticking this on the telly on Christmas Day as a sort of cross-generational people pleaser. I think for kids, I think that they might not notice a lot of the inconsistencies and weirdness that adults might pick up on. Adults, as we were watching it, I think we had a really good time just laughing at some of the ridiculousness.
The whole concept is flawed. As a basic spoiler-free premise, it's a baker attending a baking competition in a town or a country.
It's a small European country called Belgravia.
Which is effectively supposed to be like Monaco, I think, where it's basically a principality. And in this town where this baking competition is happening, there was a princess due to marry a prince.
But she's not a princess, she's a duchess.
Oh, she's a duchess.
So the princess of the title is not actually a princess.
Yeah, no, she's actually a duchess. And the princess and baker find out they look identical and decide to switch. Hilarity ensues. Now, I did say that it is charming in that it's very nice and it's just a bit silly. But
Vanessa Hudgens gives a great performance in both of the lead roles.
Yeah,
neither of which are a princess.
It's just very. I don't know if it's poorly done or if it's intentionally done to be a little bit silly. For example, like they go to Wembley Studios to film things, and like Wembley Studios to try and make it English, even though it's not supposed to be England, and there's bad English accents all over the place and weirdness. It's all over the place.
I really think that this is one of those shows, one of those films, that like in the age of like made for TV specials in America, the Disney Channel would have got away with this and nobody would have questioned it because it would have been made for American audiences, and a lot of Americans might not have been to Europe, so they might not know what Europe's like. But in this age of streaming where they're pushing it as hard to European audiences as American audiences, and there's more international travel going on these days as well, I think that their depiction of Europe is totally overblown and ridiculous. And it's the most it's so American and twee that I just it's very kind of hard to believe.
It is. We said at the time, one of the main house where they stay in, it looks just like they've just taken one of their Western sets, one of the Western movie sets, and just blasted it with a snow cannon for 20 minutes.
And hung some candy canes
yeah,
on
because
it.
it's a total like American ranch house sort of thing. But they're just dressed it up to try and look like some Swiss mountain town chalet, and it doesn't work.
Yeah.
That is, but frankly, the least of my concerns with the film. But it is charming. I highly recommend giving it a watch because it's funny in its awfulness in a sense. But I do suggest watching it with a group of friends where you want to feel a little bit festive. If you're a student in halls and you want to get everyone together and watch a movie and you've all seen Home Alone too many times, and like me, you don't agree that Die Hard is a Christmas film, pop this on, but have a good few drinks with it. It's definitely one that I think a certain amount of beer and wine will improve it dramatically. It did for us anyway.
I think, if you're a family and you're watching it on Christmas Day, like I say, I think the kids will like it. I think the parents will laugh at it, and the grandparents can happily fall asleep during it and won't have missed anything.
Can't have sherry too many with this one. But what about a different film? Was you've been to see Fantastic Beasts 2 recently?
Yes. So while I suspect that The Princess Switch was something of a low budget effort for a Netflix film, this is like the opposite end of the spectrum.
You think more money was spent on this?
Fantastic Beasts 2 it's got a real epic sort of sense to it. It's,
before we go on,
sets.
Sorry to interrupt you, we're going spoiler free here, aren't we? Just in case anyone is switching off, it's spoiler free because I haven't seen this either.
I will need to be careful.
Yes.
I will concentrate on what I'm saying.
If you spoil this for me, then we're
But
dead.
we've got, so on CNET we've got a spoiler free review that you can read, and then we've got a piece that I've written which is all of the outstanding questions that the film threw up for me, which there were a lot of things that I was left wondering about at the end, that does contain spoilers. So if you have seen the film, then maybe check that list out and see if you agree, because I was left feeling a little bit confused and frustrated at the end of it. So if you are a Harry Potter fan and also felt like that, then you might find some questions on those lists.
What frustrated you the most, if you can say without can you not say?
I think I probably can say. So I feel like, actually, can I?
Let's not risk it. Let's go a different way then. And did you enjoy it? Did you enjoy it as a Harry Potter fan? And would you enjoy it as someone new? Like, would you recommend it to anyone who's new to the franchise?
No,
okay.
I wouldn't. Because I think that it relies on a lot of knowledge of like past films.
Okay.
I also don't think that it I think if you've watched the first one, I think you should probably be fine, and you have a vague idea of Harry Potter, then you're probably okay watching it. But like, don't watch it on its own. And I think that is probably, I did find it enjoyable. Like, I did enjoy the process of watching it, but it's not one of those films that you would ever just be like, oh, we'll stick Crimes of Grindelwald on the telly. Like, you can just watch it as a standalone thing. And I think that actually, if you are going to create a film like this and spend that much money on it, I think that you should be able to watch it as a standalone
and
thing.
I do that with the other Harry Potter films.
Yeah, I do
Less so with Deathly Hallows 1 and 2, but with some of the other ones, I will happily pop, certainly Prisoner of Azkaban, because I think that one out of all of them is the story that stands up on its own the most. But the other ones, I mean, it's obviously still following the same general overarching plot, but it's still got its own distinct beginning, middle, and an end.
Exactly. And I think it also really helps that they did, the stories are very distinct, and they had different directors for each of the different films, so that you kind of have like a different thing kind of going on. And actually that inconsistency doesn't really matter, because the if you know anything about Harry Potter, you know how much the story changes and how it gets much darker as it goes on. And so the kind of the more childlike qualities that the first two films have, both in terms of the storyline and the production values, I think really, really shifts later on, and it allows the stories to stand up on their own. This is not a film that will stand up on its own, I don't think. I would like to be proved wrong in future. I wanted to like this more than I did. And I think I enjoyed it, but fundamentally, it is not a good film.
damning thoughts. So we shall leave it on that note. Obviously, Fantastic Beasts 2 is out now, I believe.
It is. It's out now.
And I mean, I think it's one of those things that even if you're a Potter fan already, even being told it's not a good film, you're still going to go and see it because you want it. Because you want it. Like, why wouldn't you? Unless you've been told for some reason it's so terrible, it's not worth your money.
No.
Like, you'll still see it at some point. But
and it's beautiful. It's high budget. The sets, the costumes, the creatures. There's still a lot to admire in there.
Is there another cute, steely sort of moley?
The Nifflers from the first Fantastic Beasts film make a return and kind of play a crucial role in the plot.
Oh.
I think the Nifflers.
Go and watch it to find out what that is.
The Nifflers are a highlight.
Okay, that's good to know.
Yeah.
Let's move on very quickly before we end on a little talk about our favourite iPhone games. Now, I want to talk about this because we got chatting about this earlier in the day and maybe realised that we don't really talk about iPhone games at all on the podcast. I talk at great length, as you'll know, about some of the AAA console titles like Red Dead Redemption 2, which I've now talked about 3 episodes in a row, and it's still brilliant, by the way, and my horse Mary Cloppins is fantastic. But I want to talk about mobile games a little bit because we've both had our noses firmly stuck in a couple of games for weeks and weeks and weeks now, months, in fact, for me. But why don't you start and tell us about your game?
Yes, so I've been playing a game called Home Design.
Home Design.
And I found out about this because one of our editors in the US, Leslie Katz, wrote a brilliant piece about how she'd become really obsessed with it, and it sounded great, and so I decided that I would download it and also have a go. And I will link to the piece in the story and in the show notes.
Do you mean I will?
Yes. But ultimately, this is a game that is it kind of does what it says on the tin. You design homes. I mean, you design
not a creative
specific
name,
rooms.
is it, for a creative game?
It's very descriptive, I suppose. But the it's a sort of there's a competitive element to it. So you design a room, and it's judged against other rooms that you've been given a kind of a blank slate, as it were, and a concept, a little storyline about people that perhaps live there.
So it's going to be a alpine chalet retreat,
yes,
or Manhattan stylish apartment.
I might try and pull some of the descriptions up actually because they are really rather good. But
you place furniture and you place art and you place other decorations in, and those, I believe, all the decorations, all the furniture and stuff, they are actually real products and real designers,
yes,
real stores. So everything you're creating could be made.
Yeah, this is correct.
But it's not sponsored by any. It's not like it's not IKEA's game.
No, it's not. It's not kind of created or sort of officially sponsored. But I think certain challenges are sponsored by certain interior decor companies. And as a very amateur home decor enthusiast, I don't actually know a lot about the companies, so I couldn't really tell you. I'm new to interior design, but
there may be like a Habitat challenge where Habitat's like decorate this room but without anything from our catalogue.
Yeah.
Habitat is like the only place I could think of that wasn't John Lewis.
Here's
or
one.
IKEA.
Here was one. It was you had to design a kids' room in Queensland in Australia, and the brief was to design a giraffe-themed bedroom for a little girl.
Like that.
Which was one of my favourite challenges. Here was another one. This was that they can get quite specific. So this one was you needed to design a living room in Edinburgh, Scotland, style a modern study for a lepidopterist. I think that's how you say it. Moving into her new home in Edinburgh, Scotland. I had to Google that, and it was I think it's somebody who studies butterflies. So yeah, like they can get really like specific. I really like. I love this game. I find it like really kind of meditative. I usually do like 1 or 2 challenges a day. You get like a daily reward for kind of going in.
And how do you win then? These challenges, like what's the game?
People will vote to like decide, whether whether you get a kind of overall you get a score out of 5 stars, and if you get over 4 stars you get certain prizes, you get more furniture, and if you get 5 stars you get even bigger prizes. And for each,
do you get
also
5 stars
for
every
each,
time?
No, I've only had a couple of 5 stars. It's really hard to get 5 stars. For each of the challenges, you also earn money for your duties,
Real money
for your services, as an interior designer. So,
cool.
I am not one for gaming that much, but when there is something like this, then I quite take to it.
It's just more of a creative challenge when it is a game.
Yeah.
Like the gaming element is pretty minimal.
Yeah.
You just want to design a really nice looking room, and I think that's cool. And I do like that it's brand agnostic in the sense that it's not. It's a sort of game that I can really see IKEA have made, given that they do basically have that technology already. They use it so you can design your room.
Reality,
yeah, and you can design rooms using their stuff so you can see what things look like. But gamifying it seems like a really, really cool idea.
I feel like
it's free, isn't it?
It is free.
It's on iOS and on Android.
It's you can obviously pay to buy more stuff within the game. I've paid a little bit. I would say no more than £10 maximum, and I've been playing it for a few months.
So yeah, you've definitely got that value. And I think it's good with any game that's free to play like that. On one hand, I'm always loathed to give in to any like pop-ups and anything like that that's like basically means pay to win. If you want to actually play any more, then you've got to pay.
Oh yeah.
But on the other hand, when I find a game that I enjoy and I sink a lot of hours in, I will pay what I believe I should have paid, or maybe would have paid if I'd have bought this for the amount of hours I've played.
Yeah.
There are games like True Skate, like a skateboarding game on the iPhone, which I play. I would love to know how much I played, because I reckon I've played that certainly in the hundreds of hours, if not thousands, because I will play that at least an hour every single day on my commutes. And have done for the last several years.
Is that the game that you wanted to tell us about? Or
no, it isn't that game.
Specific
That's
that
another
you
game.
That you want to talk about?
No, I wanted to talk about Asphalt 9, which is Gameloft's. It's their big, high-profile racing series, and Asphalt 9 came out. Asphalt 9 Legends, I believe it's called, came out a good few months ago now. But I've been playing it pretty solidly since it came out. And it is brilliant. It's so much fun. I did like the Asphalt series before, but not as much as I've enjoyed this one. I don't know what it is. I mean, one, it looks brilliant, but the gameplay is a little bit easy because it has these like auto drive functions. Basically, it's a car racing game. Like
I was
going to
ask.
It's a car racing game.
Yeah.
But there is like these auto drive functions where instead of having to focus on like tilting the phone to get it just right, which can be a little difficult to do if you're playing on your commute. It does the driving for you, and you sort of decide the routes you want to take. There's always different routes, and if you want to sort of take this route, which will take you on a particular jump, and you earn like basically extra speed for the tricks, or if you want to go and get like a bottle of nitrous, which will make you go faster. It's a bit more tactics rather than it is about skill at racing. But it is a game which is free to play and is fundamentally revolves around the money making part of it is, do you want to buy like card packs to get new cars? Do you want to pay to upgrade certain cars? But you can do all of that without paying a penny should you want to. You can go, it's more difficult, it's certainly more time consuming, but you can do it. And I actually think they've got a really good balance in not like blasting you constantly with, oh, buy this and it's this much money. And, I think they've got a good balance. I've played plenty of games which, certainly EA games, who have historically been really bad with this sort of thing, where it's really like, if you want to do anything in this game, you've got to pay money. They're real suckers for the whole, if, in SimCity, for example, you wanted a building to be built immediately, then spend like £5 or whatever for it to be done, or wait 3 days in real time for it to be done. So I think they've done really good. It's a lot of fun to play, and you really kind of, for me, I feel committed to wanting to unlock more cars. And when you do, I want to actually play. I want to build them up. And there's a good multiplayer thing as well, where it matches you with other real players around the world, and I think that's good as well, because I don't have that in a lot of games. There isn't a lot of a multiplayer element, but a racing game obviously makes a lot of sense. And I think they've got a good balance of how they match you up with other people. I tend to be able to come first or second on some, and some of them I will come 7th or 8th. And it's almost got like that Mario Kart thing where you can be doing really, really well the whole race, and then someone takes you down, because there is that, you can crash into people and take them out of the race, and then suddenly you're in the last place. And it is really annoying, but in a way that you kind of want to keep playing, again, like Mario Kart, where 2 laps you're in first place, and right as you're about to cross the finish line, someone hits you with a shell and you're back at the end, which is annoying, but it's kind of fun in the same way.
Yeah, I guess it's just like there's always everything to play for,
yeah,
which is a nice feeling.
Yeah, but it's great. Yeah, and I say it's free. It's on iOS and it's on Android. It looks great. I think it's probably quite demanding. I'm playing on an iPhone 10, and I've been using it as my benchmark game on a lot of the other flagships, and it plays really, really well. I haven't played it on a really low-end Android phone, so I'm not sure if it'll run particularly well, because it is so glossy. There are so many swooshing effects and light things and all kinds of other things going on. So I suspect it's probably for higher-end phones only, but it's definitely worth checking out if you are after a racing game. The only downside that I do have is that you do need an internet connection to play it. So
and that's same for Design Home.
Oh, it's the same for that.
Yeah.
And I find that a little frustrating if you're on the tube a lot, but I tend not to go underground as much anymore because I'm not a womble. So there we go. 2 games that are great, and if you want to spend some time away from your family at Christmas and just having a bit of gaming, then those are good ones to go for. But that does bring us to a close. Thank you very much, Katie, for joining us. Do remind us where people can get in contact with you directly, should they want to.
You can tweet me to chat about tech or other things. I don't really mind.
Dogs, giraffes.
Yeah, I've got a wide variety of interests. At Katie Collins on Twitter.
And Instagram?
Oh, yeah, you can find me on Instagram at An Unfamiliar Sky.
An Unfamiliar Sky. An Unfamiliar's Guy. Or not. You can find me with @BatteryHQ on Twitter and Instagram. Give me a follow on Instagram. I prefer it on there. I tend not to use Twitter all that much these days. But of course, you can get in touch with the show with CNET UK podcast at cbsi.com. Please do. We would love to hear your thoughts on all of today's topics, or indeed any other tech topic you want to chat to us about. We will read out your email if you want us to, or if we want to, both. So yeah, do keep the conversation coming. And if you are watching on YouTube, then please make sure to like and leave your comments below and subscribe for more. And otherwise, we will see you next time.